As we've discussed before, Bitcoin is designed to be attacked. When the EU says we need to attack the price of Bitcoin, that is music to Bitcoiners' ears because all attacks mean greater hash rate, greater security, and higher prices. It's designed to be attacked. The more you attack it, the higher the price goes. So we welcome the EU's attacks and the IMF and Christine Lagarde and central banks and Federal Reserve Bank. Please attack me so that my price can go to $100,000, $200,000, $1 million a coin. Thank you.
The Central African Republic has become the second country in the world to adopt Bitcoin as official currency, after El Salvador took the same step last year. The lawmakers in the CAR's parliament voted unanimously to pass a bill legalizing Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, according to a statement from the presidency. This means that Bitcoin will be considered legal tender alongside the regional Central African CFA franc. So what does this latest development mean for investors in specific and Bitcoin community in general? Let's hear what Max Keiser has to say about this. Hello and welcome to Money Talks. In today's video, Max Keiser updates about EU's proposal planning to ban Bitcoin due to its environmental impacts, Central African Republic's decision to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender, and why 2022 is the beginning of a new Bitcoin era. So without wasting any time, let's dive right into the video.
So the EU is saying, if Ethereum can change the code and make themselves less carbon intensive, then so should Bitcoin. And we're going to need to attack the price of Bitcoin. The only thing that these Bitcoiners understand is price. We're going to attack the price, and we're going to support Ethereum. So this is this is what's going on here over there at the EU. The Swedish financial regulator and the EU Commission discussed the possibility of banning Bitcoin and proof of work due to its environmental impact. Now, this, of course, is insanity because what the EU is doing is they're removing themselves from the race to become Bitcoinized and hyper-Bitcoinization. Whereas, as you point out, they're all over Africa, the colonies of the EU. These countries are like, hey, man, we're going to break free. And we're going to emancipate ourselves from fiat money, and that's what's happening. This idea of attacking the price of Bitcoin, as you say there, it reveals the EU as being anti-free markets and to a great extent anti-free speech because they've also voiced objection to Elon Musk and his takeover of Twitter because they don't believe in unfettered free speech. They don't believe in free markets and free enterprise. So they're really, really getting back to their roots as socialists and communists in the European Union, heavily bureaucratic, royalists, top-down monarchies and bureaucrats. Hello?
Quintillionaires and elitists and aristocrats and imperialists, right? So, I mean, it ties in with the next story of Bitcoin. The Central African Republic adopts Bitcoin as legal tender. So it's officially the second country in the world. We kind of waited on this because it was hard to discern whether or not this was actually true. But it turns out that the Central African Republic, has adopted Bitcoin as legal tender. That's the second nation after El Salvador.
Recently, the Central African Republic's parliament voted unanimously to make Bitcoin legal tender. Unless you're familiar with your geography or keep up with politics in Central Africa, this might be your first time even knowing such a country exists. The Central African Republic is now the second country to do so in the last year. El Salvador was the first country to recognize Bitcoin as legal tender in June 2021.
Yeah, it's like the global south, right? Because in the U.S., if you go south, you find Central America and Latin America. In Europe, you go south and you find Africa.
Yeah.
And it's colonies in the south. And so this
ex-colonies.
Ex-colonies. So these ex-colonies in Africa are busting free of the French and their influence on their currency. And over here in Central and South America, they're busting free of the Federal Reserve in Washington, D.C. And their influence on their economy and their currency. So it's the BRICS and the global south. I mean, they're making this huge Bitcoin-enabled move. They've been waiting hundreds and hundreds of years for an opportunity to establish their own sovereignty. Just a couple of days ago, we're talking about El Salvador and Bitcoin adoption in El Salvador. People were saying, the adoption rate is not happening as fast as people want it to happen. And I said, look, it's global FOMO. I said, look, probably a country in Africa will be the next to announce Bitcoin as legal tender. And I said that 3 or 4 days ago. And then this will create FOMO internationally. So now, going back to Central America, now those countries that were sitting on the fence will be like, oh my God, we've got to now move because this is going global. So global FOMO kicking in. So Africa saw what's happening there. So they made Bitcoin legal tender. Now that's going to be reciprocated over back in Central America and Latin America. And then it goes to global FOMO. And pretty soon you're going to have 20, 30, 40 countries on Bitcoin as legal tender. Internet companies and phone companies are going to be like, wow, how many people live in this country? I don't know.
Elon Musk could also,
do Starlink.
Right.
So the people want it, and there's a big market there, and they can leapfrog over the bureaucrats that have been keeping everything down. So this exciting times for this country.
Understanding the Central African Republic's history helps clear the air on potential motives for this decision. The country is a former colony of France. Many of these former colonies still rely on the governments and financial institutions that once ruled them. The Central African Republic uses the CFA franc. This currency is used by 6 other countries within the region and pegged to the euro. To maintain this peg, the Bank of Central African States, who oversees these 6 countries' banking and financial policies, is required to keep at least 50% of its foreign assets in the French treasury. Some believe this has limited economic development in the country. An embrace of Bitcoin will sever dependence on the euro and their former French colonial power.
So, somebody should do a screen for countries with populations under 10 million that don't have their own currency, and that would be a good hit list for the next to become Bitcoin as legal tender.
Except for a hit list, of course, is the economic hitmen may show up there. And I'm sure they're already thinking about that, of how to stop this from happening. Because, of course, as we discussed at the top of the show, the EU, this is their now policy that has been leaked, is that they want to stop Bitcoin adoption under the guise of saying it's environmentally.
A lot of French African countries like Cameroon, Gabon, Ivory Coast, to name 3, and a couple of others. And they're all former French colonies, and they're all using French currency. And so this country definitely is going to resonate in all those countries. So you put these two together, that's 7 million and 5 million. That's right. That's 12 million is now on Bitcoin. And they're all part of the global population. So the populations of countries that are now on Bitcoin standard in the last 2 days has almost doubled. So now I think the speed at which we find countries making Bitcoin legal tender is going to pick up. So El Salvador is less than a year ago that they made Bitcoin legal tender. So in less than a year, we've got 2 countries, and we're early on in this year. So by the end of 2022, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 other countries. So we're well now on our way toward global hyper-Bitcoinization.
Countries that use currencies tied to Western economies have little to say in economic policy. This is one of the main reasons why El Salvador made a similar move. Policies enacted in the US or France eventually trickle down and negatively impact these countries' economics. International economic policy tends to be decided by countries with the wealthiest economies. Naturally, these policies favor their own domestic interests. Smaller economies are left on the periphery and forced to deal with the hand they are dealt. Bitcoin levels the playing field. Because Bitcoin cannot be manipulated or controlled by a governing authority, smaller economies can make their own policies without needing consent from other world powers. Governments will no longer be able to control the money supply. Countries that once got the short end of the economic stick can now control their own financial destiny.
Once you go Bitcoin, you never go back.
Right. The right people are saying negative things about Bitcoin, like IMF and central banks and stuff like that. So these countries take notice, and when they hear Christine Lagarde or the EU speak negatively about Bitcoin, they perk up. They're like, if they hate it, it's probably something we should look at. So the more they talk, the worse it gets for them. It's the beginning of a new era. We're at the beginning of a new era, that is for sure. So we're just finding our way in this new beginning, this new era, this Bitcoin era, the end of the 40-year era of financialization, the Reagan-Thatcher era. Thatcherism, Reaganism, started in early 1980. I think that's finished. It's over now in 2022. So we're into a new era. This is like the Bukele era.
The post-Bukele era. Yep.
I think so. Well, there's no downside to it. If a country makes Bitcoin legal tender, there's no downside. The only thing they have is they get instant recognition and that people are talking about them. They have the possibility to connect with this global monetary network, that there's absolutely no downside. So, and it's easy to do. Just write a law that takes 5 minutes that says we just made Bitcoin legal tender, and
Plug in your full node.
yeah, there's only upside to it. So I think that's a lot of countries, once they realize that there's absolutely no risk to your country in making Bitcoin legal tender, that they'll just be like, why not? You know, there's only upside to this. And so they'll just be doing it.
It'll be the ones that can print money that are the last, the US and Europe and Japan.
Yeah.
So those are the last. They have a huge quintillionaire class.
But that's like the North, right? The global North.
Yeah.
Is now the world is turning, and the North will be on the bottom and the South will be on the top. So that's part of, cycles, the Thucydides trap we mentioned, and the Triffin dilemma, and all these cyclical events and different epochs come and go, and the planets are orbiting and the satellites are orbiting, and asteroids are coming, and Halley's Comet is back. And by the way, the global South is now going to be running the show, and the global North is in decline, based on this Bitcoin standard and the collapse of all the infrastructure that's been keeping things going for the last 40 years plus.
So what are your thoughts about Bitcoin's latest adoption as legal tender? Tell us in the comments. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you soon with the next video. Thank you so much for watching.